And we are live. Hello and welcome to Developer Insights. I'm David.
And I'm Justin.
And together we are the leads on game development and design here at Codename.
We also founded Codename too.
So we're going to be your hosts for this episode and for every single episode.
Because when we're not here, the show doesn't happen.
It also doesn't happen when the office power goes out.
Yes, that is true. Today is our 90th episode.
And it almost didn't happen.
Well, almost is a stretch. I mean, the power's been back on for almost an hour.
Sure, but we needed that time to write one of our stilted intros. Without it, we just can't do the show.
Stilted? Like high up on sticks?
No, that's the other definition. I'm using the one meaning a manner of talking or writing that's stiff, self-conscious, or unnatural.
Well, in that case, that is pretty on point. As always, we are here to answer development and design questions about Idle Champions.
If you don't ask any questions, however, you may have to suffer through Justin's one-man reenactment of today's executive management meeting. I don't think we're going to do that on air. You mean the one that didn't happen because the power was out at the office?
Maybe you guys didn't attend, but I joined from home and was there for the whole thing.
But we were all here at the office. You would have been all by yourself with nobody else to talk to.
Yes, which makes it the perfect candidate for a one-man show.
I see. Yeah, we did the meeting without you. Anyway, as always, we pulled some questions forward from the previous show that we didn't get to, so we will answer some of those while we're waiting for new questions to come in. But before we get to those, we do have some updates on items that have been flagged to be looked at by the development team. So without further stalling for time, in a manner stilted or not, let's get started with those. Okay, looks like we do have one fix/new feature that is going to be rolled out. I believe Peter's doing builds today or tomorrow to get it rolled out tomorrow specifically for console. This was in regards to the familiar UI. When we rolled out the familiars for potions, that created actually quite a large number of confusing items in the console UI for the potion buffs. And so we took a look at that and we reorganized it by category so that now they're all organized by player damage, ultimates, champion levels, and the new potion buffs. And the new potion buffs are appearing at the bottom. So hopefully that's a lot more clear on what each of those is doing, and actually just sort of looking at it, sort of having it been out for a while and then a lot of additional slots being added, it definitely needed to be cleaned up there. So that's an improvement for sure. Additionally, we have our in-progress items. Now, we are going to make it so that season champions do not appear in the free time gate choices. We're going to take a look at how many chests you can purchase at a time, because you're now able to open 1,000, and so it makes sense that we adjust some of the numbers for how many you can purchase. We've got here, we want to add hotkeys for new systems, but I did get a message from Peter before the show saying, spoiler, we're out of hotkeys. I don't know how we could possibly be completely out of hotkeys, so I'm going to talk to him about that after, but it sounds like we may be getting close to the edge of how many keys we actually have available. We also want to add a hide UI button for the lower UI, although that may have the added concern, which is something that Peter also raised with me. And I think I raised it at the time when this was brought up on stream, is that potentially there are some backgrounds that don't have art at the very bottom. So we'll have to take a look at that and make sure that we're not exposing sort of the seams of the art or just absent art if that's the case. Additionally, we're confirming that all areas have distractions properly assigned to them. We're going to add a prevention for a kicked player just for joining the trials lobby. If you kick them, they should say kicked. They shouldn't be able to join right back. Change the order of favor on the favor display and not be just in ID order. We're going to add a sort order to the shop for by price, because why would it be that the shop didn't have a by price option? An option to add a sort by slot back to the blacksmithing contract screen. And last but not least on the list here today is putting arrows on the blacksmith contract selection, the number on for being able to fine tune that if you're working on a touchscreen. As it was pointed out, just moving that scroll bar can be kind of finicky, and so having just to add one, remove one would be an improvement for that. All right, that is all of those items. I think we've got nothing on the announcement list. On to leftover questions from the previous show.
Fantastic. Let us begin. And my apologies in advance to the stream if I start hacking and coughing in the middle of a sentence. I can't control it.
How are you still sick?
I don't know. Oh no. The first question is from last week's episode is from the West Dude, who asked, can you make it so the top boxes don't have new DLC for stuff we already got, like the current Parrot familiar? I got it, but the box is still there all the time.
Yeah. I have this. Actually, I've got this tagged in my other document of things that have been requested from the stream. This does make a lot of sense to me. I don't see any reason why we should be continuing to show boxes at the top. Once you've purchased the item that they're advertising, I think the issue right now is that the connection between the advertisement for it and the purchase is tenuous. But I'm going to run that by Peter and see if we can't come up with an option or a solution so that we don't advertise things you've already purchased. I can certainly see how that's certainly unnecessary and a little bit frustrating. So I'm tagging that one.
Cool. Next question here is from Henry Lonewin, who asked, could you please change the sort order on the on sale tab that already bought and can get a bonus chest items are sorted before already bought? Scrolling through the already bought items won't generate sales for you, and for us it's annoying. That's true.
Yes, that is a fair point. So for those of you who might not be familiar, when you purchase, what does it apply to, Justin? Is it just the DLC packs?
DLC packs, yeah.
When you purchase a DLC pack, the next time that DLC pack is put on sale, we do offer an option in the shop for you to claim a bonus chest because you've already bought the item that's on sale. And yeah, it sounds like it's just not being sorted based on what's what has a bonus chest and what doesn't. So I think that's a fair request as well. So I'm going to tag that and see if we can add some sort to that, because that just makes sense. Next question, left over from last week, is from Crazy Goatman 22. What happened to Crazy Goatman 0 through 21?
We don't talk about that.
Okay, fair enough. Is it possible to stop Dungeon Master from being able to pick the champion on trials as one of the ones to bring in, since they are locked out in that case?
Yeah,
that doesn't seem fair.
I believe this is possible. This was like the next to last question before we ended this was the next question after we ended the show, and I had meant to actually highlight this in yellow to get Peter to look at it last week, but I will highlight it this week, and we'll have someone look at that. I know we were able to make it so that the daily quests in Season 4 would no longer pick champions that were off on trials, since that was happening a lot with Jarlaxle, since he was a popular one to send. So we should be able to do that for Dungeon Master as well.
Okay. Next question. This is from Erebra. Oh dear. Erebra 2001. How would you say that, Justin? That's
I would array and then HTML line break 2001.
Okay, well, it's just not me. Anyway, the question that they asked was, we have speed champs that take off the top end of the area goal. In other words, it reduces from 25 things to 18 things. What about a speed champ that triggers at the other end? In other words, 3 things left to collect kill, and the champ gets impatient and just moves to the next area.
Yeah. So I think that a champion that gets impatient and moves on to the next area sounds like a good thing. Would mid-August be okay?
Is mid-August okay?
Hashtag spoiler alert.
Are you trying to say you already did this?
Maybe.
Can you tell us which champion?
I cannot, because they have not been announced yet.
Oh. Well, okay. New champion, unannounced.
But good question.
Skips things.
It's a very good question. I saw that one and liked it and had to pull it up.
Now, from just a purely functional standpoint, how is that any different from reducing the number of things you need?
Well, you can have both of those.
Oh, okay. They stack. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. You didn't put them in the same slot, though, did you?
Probably. I mean,
Uh,
we're jerks like that.
Okay. Oh, we heard it here first. Next question. This is also by Herb Linebreak 2001. Would it be possible in the time gate screen to identify what roles the characters have? And there was my top 3 unowned by popularity are Walnut, Stokey, and Fen, but I can't see what role they fill without leaving the game to look them up.
Yeah, this is a really good question. This is probably something that we will be able to address once the new collections dialogue is in the game. Right now, we don't really have a place, like, there's sort of 2 parts to this. One is we don't really have room on the time gate screen to put all of the information that would be useful there to really tell what champion to pick. And so we need to have that somewhere external, but there's also nowhere in the game where you can see details of champions you don't have. So what will happen here is we'll put that collections dialogue in that I've been talking about for years at this point, and that will have a list of heroes, and I'll have at least some of the details on there before you unlock them. And so that is where we can direct you to in the game when you're looking at the time gate screen to figure out which champion you want to unlock. So you can do your research without having to leave the game.
Okay. All right, on to questions from today's show. First question, right out of the gate here, is from Fewer Pills. And Fewer Pills would like to know, can Crux please get a check on his variant counter for both his abilities? He only counts all base adventures and variants, but only patron variants completed after Crux has been unlocked.
Yeah, this definitely sounds like a bug. The next question here from Ranram is the exact same one. I'm just going to copy and paste these and at them at Peter and see if
right this moment
whether or not this is a known issue or something that is now a known issue. So yeah, we'll look into that and see what's going on there. It should be counting all of them.
Okay. Next question. This is from, I don't know what to say about this name. We mentioned it last week. It is probably our new favorite name, which is Meow Arf Moo. Half cat, half dog, all cow. I don't know how they want to go with that. I'm just spitballing here. Anyway, the question is, I'm still within my first month of noobness, so please pardon all of my noob questions. I've recently been poking around with Modron stuff and very much like this part of the game. Is there an option to plan for the next core upgrade so we can place pipes on top of spots for the next level and save them so they are ready and working when we reach the next level?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great idea. It is obviously not something that we have in the game right now. I'm not sure how much work that would be to implement something like that. It sounds like it wouldn't be awful. To have a sort of planning mode that you could place the pipes there, and then the actual Modron ooze, whatever it is, would just ignore them if they're in areas that are still locked. So I don't mind that idea, and it could be a cool little side project for one of the devs at some point if they get bored of implementing champions or events or seasons.
How long does it typically take, though, for someone to get from sort of the lowest level to unlock those missing spots? I mean, sort of, it feels like there's a bit of a period where that would be useful, but I'm not sure how long that is.
I mean, for a newer player, I think it could be a sort of a multi-month thing to get their first Modron core up to the max level. And then, of course, you're always going to be getting new Modron cores as you go along as well. So you've got not just one Modron core to do this with, but potentially up to 4 or 5 or 6 if you do all of the Modron. If you get and do all of the Modron cores.
Right. Okay. So the usefulness is not entirely limited to a very short period of time, I guess. Sort of what I was thinking.
And of course, there's new Modron cores coming out every once in a while. With
spoilers.
When we release new parties, we'll generally add a new Modron core in there, though that's not always guaranteed. And every few seasons, we'll often do a Modron core as well, just to keep things fresh.
Are we planning to release new parties soon, though? How many are we at? 4?
We're at 4. And I don't know if we're planning to release new
Party 5 when. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, next question. This question is from Emote. Beetle and Grim have a legendary that buffs dwarves and another that buffs neutral champions. Grim is neither of these. Does this break the rule that all DPS champions are 6 out of 6 applicable for themselves? Or do legendaries look at VNG's shared tags rather than their individual tags? Because I know Modron stat nodes look at their individual stats. Legendaries are more difficult to test, though.
Yeah, so I think that the legendaries do look at their shared tags. So that's the reason why there's a dwarf on one of those and the neutral on one of those. It's obviously legendary gear doesn't change based on which of the two champions is currently in the party, and they're really a bit of an edge case in terms of how tags work on champions for the most part. So yeah, I would say this is one of those edge cases where they kind of break the general rule of having all of the legendaries applicable to themselves, and is potentially something that we could look at if we get to the point of including Beetle and Grim in a season, and we want to kind of try and clean them up, because that's one of the things we like to do in seasons is kind of remove uncomfortable edge cases and just add in more interesting ones. So I would say that that's something we could potentially address in a season rework.
Okay, next question. This is from Garwar. The current Reforged system is still, you'll never ever be able to get all champions set the way you want due to the increase in cost. Any chance that this can be re-evaluated?
Yeah, I could see this being reevaluated down the road. We still want it to be expensive to get your champions all to exactly the perfect piece of gear. But I don't think we want it to be a never ever ever kind of thing. We want it to be like, if you have put in the time and the effort, that it is possible to do. I would say it's probably still going to be a never ever ever range to get it for every single champion in the game, but something so you can get a couple of champions the way you want them without having to spend to grind away and the trials Mount Tiamat for years. Then yes, absolutely, I think that's something we can look at.
Okay. Next question. This one is from Library of Akasha, asking any progress on Modron core rewards past level 15. My Nordrum is ready. I really do hope we can convert Modron core XP into Modron components. Scrapping pipes for components isn't a great system because you never know if you might need that pipe, or you just scrapped sometime in the future for another core or layout. Tons of regret.
Yeah, so I think we haven't really talked about internally about the Modron core rewards past the max level, or basically letting you over level Modron cores. There's some stuff we have to kind of address before we get to that, like what are the implications for let's say people who script in the game and may be able to get a lot more Modron XP than your average player would, and how we kind of balance those for the health of the game. So yeah, I mean, I think it's something we'd still like to do down the road, but it's not something that is bubbled up to the top of the design list of things to do, for lack of a better term.
Okay, so I'm just highlighting questions here. Next question. This is from Meow Arf Moo, asking, have there ever been plans to introduce specialty familiars where they could provide some tiny benefit, an added buff, multi-click, debuff, etc., possibly to a limited group type area, etc., as opposed to how all the familiars are currently universal in their functions?
Yeah, it's a cool idea. We don't have any familiars that do this kind of thing. We do have some sort of Easter egg familiars in the game, or when you put a familiar on a specific champion. I think there's a couple of kind of Easter eggs in there. I won't say which ones specifically, because that's
I'm sure someone in the chat will say.
Players to figure out. But I know there's at least one, if not two. In terms of having like the specifically what you asked about, some sort of tiny benefit.
That's right. Now answer the
for
question that was asked.
Yeah. In terms of this kind of thing, I think we've tried to avoid that just because different it just the way the familiars work in the game, that we're trying to keep them pretty interchangeable. We don't want to limit a familiar to be like the best way to use this familiar is on click damage, or the best way to use this familiar is on leveling up a champion because they get a small buff when they do that or something like that. So I think keeping them universal is kind of by design, and I don't think we want to try and make some familiars better than others in situations or even in general.
Funny, I kind of thought it was a good idea. I mean, I can see a whole lot of complication in the current system with something like that, because the system does, in most cases where you assign familiars, a lot like not treat them differently, right? Like it because they aren't different. But having a buff on a familiar, I think we could explore that. I don't know that we would do it, but I feel like it's something that we could discuss as sort of what the pros and cons would be, because it does seem like that would, yeah.
Maybe
well,
I start to worry about
to
about familiar creep. Like, I've spent a bunch of money, supported the game. I've got like 100 familiars, but they're all worse than this new one that just got released. So I better buy it, kind of thing.
Well, we're gonna need those for the familiar battler, right? Like the pet battler system that you've been designing, where you battle familiars Pokemon style.
Idle champions, mon. Yeah.
I mean, all games kind of expand into that eventually, right? You know.
I mean,
like, WoW went there.
World of Warcraft.
I can't think of another example,
yeah.
but I'm going to go with that. Fishing game, yeah. Anyway, interesting idea for sure. Probably not something that would end up being implemented, but I think it's interesting. Next question. This one is from Emote. How is adjacency determined for a champion to themselves? Oh boy, not this again. Two contradicting examples. Celeste buffs adjacent champions and doesn't buff herself. Makos, on the other hand, buffs non-adjacent champions and also doesn't buff himself. So is a champion considered adjacent to themselves or not? Can you be adjacent to yourself? I think this was one of those cases where we had the discussion.
We did talk about this, and there may be some. We talked about this at length. We had very big discussions about this.
There were many dissenting opinions.
I think the where we came out was that a champion is not adjacent to themselves, but they are also not necessarily not adjacent to themselves. So,
but it seems like the concept of adjacency in a set of one isn't a thing, right? That was where I guess that's where the contention arose. But
yes, I think it's the concept just doesn't apply to yourself, and so any or most, if not any abilities where this comes up, I think we have specifically where we want someone to buff themselves and buff adjacent champions. I think we've specifically called it out. For example, on Zorbu, he buffs adjacent champions but also buffs himself. And I think in other places where this comes up, we also call it out that way. So I think that's a good point, Dave. Where I think the concept of being adjacent to oneself isn't really.
It doesn't apply. It's not
an applicable concept. Yeah.
You really confuse the whole matter if you skip ahead to saying, "Oh, are you adjacent to yourself or not?" And say no, but also yes, but also, and then I like the real Bunny Beast comment though. If this adjacency doesn't get cleared up, I'll be beside myself. And at that point, you'd be never mind.
I think the question of is a champion considered adjacent to themselves or not? The answer is nan.
It's a divide by zero.
You've created a divide by zero error.
Okay. Next question. This is from Fewer Pills, asking, can Crux either keep his spotted favored foes permanently or get an indication of what his current favored foe for the next area is? Currently, he just says Crux has spotted a and lists all favored foe types you have ever spotted, which is nice for the achievement, but extremely useless for using him normally.
Oh, so that was an accidental pause, or I unmuted and then coughed. Anyway, I warned you all earlier. Anyway, so the answer to this question is yes. This does seem like he should indicate what his current favored foe is. I'm not sure why he doesn't. We'll highlight this one and get that done. In terms of a champion that keeps their spotted favored foes permanently, I would say you're gonna have to wait until early August or late July for that one. So yes.
Okay.
Hashtag other spoilers.
You're channeling Chris today?
Yeah, why not? I mean, that one's only a week away, so it's not really much of a spoiler. I'm sure there's going to be a champion spotlight for them tomorrow.
Are you sure? Because there's a question down here. It says, when can we expect next week's event champ spotlight this time? Tuesday again?
The reason we did a champion spotlight for Crux on Tuesday, I think was... actually, I don't know why it was, but I think it's because it was an evergreen. We did it differently. But I don't know that for sure. Maybe we're just behind on our champion spotlights.
Okay. Well, we can cross that question off then. Jumping back up. Next question here is from Garawar. If I can't get my trials reward yet because another player hasn't finished their last run, will I be unable to collect it if I start a new trial?
I'm not 100% sure on the answer to this, but my understanding, or I mean, my hope would be that you still get your reward. I think what we do is we just look at all your previous, like literally if you've done 100 runs, we'll look at all your previous 100 runs to see if any of them are tagged as I haven't collected my rewards yet, and we just award those rewards.
Do we award them or reward them? Are they awards or rewards?
We reward the we award the rewards. No. There we go. Yeah.
Well, at any rate, you get them.
You get your stuff.
Okay.
You get your stuff.
I enjoy how that went from my understanding is to I hope this is the case. So
I'm pretty sure it is.
Yep. All right. Somewhere in between hope and pretty sure and understanding.
Yeah.
Is where you land. Okay. Next question. This is once again from Meow Arf Moo. Clearly just likes having us say that on stream. When opening multiple boxes and viewing all of the sweet loot, that's how it's spelled, I'm not making it up, I noticed a duplicate card adds a bonus, and the others add the same bonus, but say 2 times or however many. The gold in the top corner also shows a value as well as a multiplier. Is the value the multiplied value, or is it the value plus multiplier? Justin's like, show me an example, please.
I am honestly not sure which way it comes down for this stuff. I have not looked that closely at the
card in a while
to know. I can tell you that uncommon gear gives 1 level, common gear gives 2, rare gear gives 6, I think, or 8, and epic gives 24 levels. So it could work out if we saw an example, if it was said like ×2 and it said 48 levels on an epic one or something like that, we would know that it was just the ×2. In general, the ×2 is for how many of those cards you got, obviously, and then I think the card itself just says the effect for one of them, so it'd be one of them times that amount. But I'm honestly not sure. I honestly have no idea which way it is. I'll have to load up my game and open a billion chests and see.
Okay. We'll wait.
We can go on to another question.
We will. Next question. This is from Library of Akasha asking 1,000 blacksmith scrolls and bounty contracts when?
Oh, I am rubber. You are glue. I bounce this question off of me and stick it to you.
Oh dear. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, certainly all of the numbers, as I mentioned, have been sort of ticking up a little bit. In particular, of course, the ability to open 1,000 chests at a time. I don't see any reason why we won't sort of increase those other numbers over time. I don't have a timeline exactly on when we would hit that up to 1,000, but I think we could probably increase that to in a smaller margin. What are they at right now? 50 is still the limit on those, right, Justin?
50, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could see us bumping that up closer to 250 or something along those lines, but I know when I mentioned this to Peter, he certainly gave me a worried look. So, but I do think sort of all the numbers on that have been inflating. So it's certainly something we're going to think about. Okay, looks like it's time for that giveaway, Justin. It's
boy,
your favorite time of the show.
I love this time of the show.
And they got a code for you that's just you're gonna love it.
It is time for our weekly giveaway of 42 chests of your choice. If you haven't been in the chat before or in the stream before, this is the point where we give away 42 chests to whoever wins the giveaway. The way it works is there will very shortly
we give it to somebody else.
It will very shortly be a yes. We honor our giveaways. There will very shortly be a code in chat. All you do is sort of copy and paste that code in, or type it if you're confident in your typing abilities, and that will enter you into the draw. If you win, you get to pick any type of chest that exists in the game, except for Gloria Bahamut chests for legacy reasons, and we will just add 42 of those chests to your account because we are generous gods.
No, we're gonna give it to a randomly selected player in their name.
A donation has been made in your name.
Yep.
Yes. Always nice to reference 90s sitcoms.
Ran into the 2000s, didn't it?
It did barely make it. It ran 10 seasons, so yes, it did span 2 decades.
Yeah, there we go.
The keyword, in case you missed it, is so just type that into chat, and yeah, that'll be great.
Okay. I think the chat's got a terrible disease.
Yeah. Did you know you can get whatever I have through the stream, and now you've all got it? So, sorry about that. You're going to be sick for 3 weeks.
Yikes. Okay. Moving on from that, we have another question here. This one is from Seawolf177. Yeah, see how easy that name is to say?
Yeah. Why can't everyone just have easy names like that?
Seawolf asks, can you not allow champions in trials when they will not make a difference? If we already have max party DPS or scales, please don't allow another champ that adds to it.
Yeah, I think this is a good question. So the TLDR on my answer here is that we will likely not be making any changes to this because the system of picking a champion to go off on the trials that adds a bonus to your party is one of the things that is going away when we rework trials, which is not the next major feature that Dev is working on, but the next one after that. So after the collections dialogue, we'll start work on the trials rework, and that will get rid of this really kind of failed system.
Okay.
Did I say twiles?
I think you might have.
Chat seems to think I said twiles. I'm going to blame the
trials of Mount Tiamat.
Well, you got to get that wascally Tiamat.
Oh dear. I think whatever you've got, it's gone right to your head. Which goes right into the next question from Lexinum. Quick question: is Justin still sick or all good?
I am kind of halfway between. I feel fine. I don't have any other symptoms really, other than a really bad cough. Which is why I'm avoiding the office. I was talking to my wife the other day, and she's like, "You could just go in. Like you're not contagious anymore." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I think if somebody else came into the office and they were coughing like I was, I would go to that person and be like, you should not be here." So I have yet to be into the office for, I don't know, it's been almost 3 full weeks now, which sucks.
Yep.
I don't want to go into the office.
Yeah, we've had all of our owners' lunches without you.
I want my owner's lunch.
Which, of course, actually today, due to the power outage, all the restaurants around here were closed. Actually, so
did it even make it across the?
It did.
Was the mall out too?
I'm not actually. That I'm not 100% sure. In the bubble, it was in the bubble.
It didn't look really. Oh, okay.
Yeah. The power outage bubble.
Yeah.
I don't know how it is for most of you folks are at, but when power goes out here, we can go to the power company website and they show on the map, like, this area is red, and then they give us a reason in an ETA.
You know, it's really good. We're calling it power instead of confusing people and calling it hydro. Because most places wouldn't. What the hell is hydro?
It's water
It's our
power. It's
it
our
all
water
comes
power.
from water.
Anyway, boo. Next question. The next question is from. Wait, that's for me. You go.
Oh, this one's for you. Oh yeah. Sorry, I forgot that three
Different
questions
color.
existed. This question's from Aspilla357, who asks, on the save slots feat save / change screen, can we get a button to remove all feats and individual buttons per champion to remove their 4 slots?
Say again?
I don't know. Like, this person just wants a whole bunch of buttons.
On the save feats, can we get a button to remove all feats and individual buttons per champion to remove all their 4 slots? I see. Like a clear slots button on each champion and a clear all the slots on the screen.
I think that's what it is, yes.
I will strongly consider it.
And Loopy79 in chat says, and a button to hide all the buttons too.
Does it hide the hide button or the show button?
Well,
to
there's
show
another
the
button to hide the hide button, yeah.
The only way to get the
Buttons
buttons
all the way
back
down.
is with a hotkey that, as I informed earlier, that we're out of hotkeys. So, yes, and in the darkness bind them. Okay. I mean,
Bind the
they are
hotkeys?
yes, key bindings after all.
Okay.
The hotkeys of power.
Oh,
Next
Loopy's
question.
letting us know that was sarcasm. Please don't do that. Thank you.
It's okay.
We got it.
Even if it
next
doesn't
question
appear like
here.
it.
Next question here is also the sickness is also doing something to my brain. It's okay. The next question here is from Fewer Pills.
I also thought we'd have to use cold keys. Sorry.
Okay. The next question here is from Fewer Pills. It is also for you, Dave. And the question is, would it be possible to remove the week-long potions from the all of the potion type familiar slot? It's kind of bad to put a familiar on that slot and it instantly consumes a 7-day potion. Those should never need a familiar.
Yeah.
My personal take on this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought so too.
Yeah.
I saw that requested earlier in the week and was like, okay, that does make sense. But now how do I visualize this so that it doesn't have a familiar? We just pull the familiar from that slot, or the familiar slot from that potion. But what if people want to put a familiar on it?
We should not allow people to put a familiar. This is one of those things where we need
Are
to
we
save
protecting people from themselves?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that.
First, we need to protect them from us using their 7-day potions, and then we need to protect them from themselves accidentally using their 7-day potions. I mean, 7-day potions are a premium potion only, right? So they only really come from premium purchases, or very, very rarely from other things. So I think those should be 100% opt-in.
Yeah. Okay. Should be able to make that happen. I think maybe just the roaming one, which I've talked with Mark, because it doesn't roam, it just sits there. Actually visualized it roaming, but that's fine. Could not hit the 7-day one. But if you really, really, really want to put a familiar on the 7-day one, I don't think we should take that one away. So, okay, cool. Next question. How do I ask a question? Yes, just like that. Next question. This is from OG17. Crux is a tank DPS support without specific tank or DPS synergy. His tank kit is a health share overwhelm, and his DPS kit is a bigger self DPS upgrade bonus. These could be applied to any character. He even has a DPS spec that excludes himself, which makes him less of a DPS than Hitch, who had his tag removed. Wow. Crux's abilities seem designed for pure support. At what stage were these roles given to him?
Yeah, so I mean, this is a good question when it comes to design and designing champions who are DPS and support is is a big challenge, because you get into these situations where if you try to design them with a bunch of specific DPS abilities and a bunch of specific support abilities, when you get to things like designing equipment, or when you get to things like designing feats, or even specializations, you get to this case where if you have some equipment that buffs a DPS ability, then that is a piece of equipment that doesn't buff his support abilities, which makes him a worse support. And likewise, if you have equipment that buffs support and not DPS things, then that makes him a better support, but not as good at DPS. And so our sort of approach to DPS support champions more recently has been to really make sure that all of their abilities and all of their equipment specifically supports both their DPS and their support stuff. Sometimes we do this a little bit better. I think Catti was implemented a little bit better, where she had some stuff where she kind of double dipped on as DPS. Crux didn't necessarily have that, but we think Crux is still a pretty darn good champion regardless, and he can still be used as a DPS. He has a bunch. He does have more DPS upgrades than your average kind of support champion. And I did think that he had something where he buffed himself with one of his support abilities twice, but we may have gotten rid of that double dip. So yeah, the intention is that he can be used as a really, really good support. And if you need a DPS that looks kind of like him, that you can use him as a DPS. If you need a tank that looks kind of like him, you can use him as a tank because he's got the additional health, he's got the health share, and he's got overwhelm. But he doesn't specifically have abilities that are purely that. The other thing I would say is we are trying to keep the ability, like the kits, a little bit smaller, and not have kits that are like 6 or 7 abilities like we've done in the past, which just starts to get super confusing and super complicated. And so if we have a bunch of support abilities that we really like for a champion, and we want them to be DPS as well, then we won't necessarily put in a DPS specific ability, because it just complicates the kit to a point that doesn't necessarily help them be an understandable and usable champion.
All right. Well, Justin, I've been reading through the doc here and highlighting more questions, and this one stood out to me, and I think I'm going to ask it right now. This is from Spicy Corsair, and they would like to know that if we're going to release a new party, can it be a pizza party? Please.
Great. Yeah. Sure. Thanks, Dad.
Boo. All right.
Let's see. Let's go back up, and yeah, there's some more questions here.
We should have a pizza party. Anyway, next question here. This is from Lord Daryl the 17th with 2 L's. Cool.
Okay.
From the Ominous Legends of Mithril Hall Rebalance changelog from June 14th. No, it was in that particular changelog, but
ominous. Okay.
It's ominous. Mm-hmm. There were a mass of new feats announced. Now, 5 weeks later, we have all epic feats through the new premium packs, but the 4 rare ones are still missing. Brunar's Mithril +1, Dritz's Mithril +1, Dritz's Icing Death +40%, and Jaraxel's Constitution +1. When do we finally get them? Rumor Mill says they're here, but only have a placeholder release date.
Yeah, so the answer to this is those ones were not supposed to be included in the changelog. They were some feats that we implemented for Season 4, but we did not, or not Season 4.
We unimplemented them?
But they were not divvied out into where they would come out. So they are feats that will come out at some point. They are just being held back until we can find some fun places to release them.
So the rumor mill is correct.
The rumor mill is correct.
This time.
They're here, but they're not yet out.
All right. Next question. This is from Belivin. How do you feel about this Crux variant having a dexterity component, which might lead to accessibility issues for players with some physical impairments?
Yeah, this is a good question, and it does this is something that comes up from time to time in terms of how hard can we make variants, and how unique can we go with variants. So for folks who don't know, the variant to unlock Crux is basically a speed run where you have to go very, very fast because every 120 seconds of real time, not game time, but 120 seconds of real time. So every 2 minutes, we take a champion that's in your formation and we lock them out for the rest of the adventure. And obviously that means that things like speed potions, things like speed champions, those are all very good because you want to get through as much of the variant as you can before your good teams are decimated by this particular reduction. Now, obviously, yes, this does require sort of some speed and it makes the variant more tense, and I could see that being challenging for folks with some physical impairments. But I do think there are probably ways to also work around that a little bit. I know that when we were doing some internal testing, one of the strategies that some folks found was to just sort of go until their formations got completely decimated down to nothing, and then just go back to area 1 and load in a new formation and then go. And that way you weren't sort of constantly getting knocked back because you're able to just, I think you can still click damage back in level 1, so you're able to keep the enemies off you. So I think there are some strategies that can help players get around that, even if they have some physical impairments. But I think we're always going to be trying to do kind of new and interesting things in the game, and we will try to be as accessible as we can. But that may be a challenge, and one that we will try and do the best we can.
Fair enough.
I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, Dave.
I mean, I think it's a bit of a tricky question, because certainly we don't want to on purposely make it difficult for players who've been playing and enjoying the game, because the game is widely accessible without having to have if you had a physical impairment, I can see the game being perfectly playable. And if we go ahead and add something in at that point, at a later point, and players in that situation might feel a little disappointed in us for doing that. But at the same time, I think it also may be a very small part of the game, and if it's something that allows us to have additional ways to vary the content, then sort of we have to balance it all out. That's definitely a tricky question to answer, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, next question here is from the Mobius Project, who asks,
you're hoping I have an answer for this. Maybe you've got an answer too. We'll see what we've got. Maybe that's the same answer.
It says, with the DPS breakout screen, the base value, I assume, is the lowest base DPS value that the character is capable of at the moment. How can both the base and bud or the damage and bud be lower than this base value?
DPS base value. Yes, that's the what's the calculated value is the base value, just sort of straight up calculated. And sort of if the players who've been with us for a while, for a long while now, know that sort of the way other abilities interact with damage means that number is almost inevitably or almost immediately wrong, in terms of it being lower than the expected outcome. I mean, my sort of top ahead, how would you end up with one that was lower? Would be maybe if that character just wasn't attacking at all.
Yeah, I feel like this is probably something where if you're auto killing, then definitely those numbers could get super duper off, because if they're based off of damage per second.
Yeah.
And chat if you're not attacking constantly.
Chat saying that whole page is a lie. Well, yeah, it's not a lie per se, but it's not accurate to sort of how things play out. It's literally just sort of a straight up calculation of what the numbers would be if nothing else was being taken into consideration.
The challenge with all of that stuff is just the actual damage that a champion does is very hard to determine until the point at which they're actually attacking a monster.
It's not accurate. Oh, come on.
It's just an alternative truth.
No, 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 no. None of that. Yes, it is misleading. I agree. I mean, that's sort of why we broke it out that way. That's why it ended up sort of isolated like that. And that's why we ended up opting for, Bud rather than sort of the actual calculated DPS values.
Yeah, it's the challenge of trying to calculate what damage is going to be, whereas Bud is what damage was. So, I mean,
yes,
it might be interesting to replace that screen with like a kind of a per champion Bud or something like that, or a per champion like last hit. But even stuff like that starts to get wonky if you hit an enemy that has a whole bunch of debuffs on them, you're going to have a much bigger hit than maybe your next couple hits that don't hit, or that hit enemies that don't have debuffs on them. And so what is the truth in that situation? What is a champion's damage if one enemy has an E to the 10 debuff on them and one enemy doesn't? Is there damage in between? Is it E to the 5 higher than their base hit, or is it E to the 10, or AOE or cleave hits? If you hit 10 enemies for a certain amount of damage, is your damage 10 times your base damage, or is it 1 time your?
Yeah, and then like you see what like the comment there that Henry's saying, sort of pre-debuff average last 10. Like we actually, that was one of the attempts that we made to try and do that earlier on before we did the Bud approach, where it was like, what's the average damage they're doing? And of course that also doesn't work if they don't get an opportunity to attack because something else is killing the monsters before they have a chance to actually do their attack. So it gets really really hairy and hard to sort of put a number on sort of what their power level is at. So.
Yeah, I think the whole purpose of the DPS breakout is really just to try and show respective to each other and respective to changes you make in the formation, whether your damage is going up and down. It's not going to be 100% accurate because of things like debuffs, but for the most part in the early game with kind of the base set of champions, which is really what that number is there for, when you put in a champion or when you move them to a more optimal spot, you're going to see that number be green and tick up. And when you make an inoptimal formation change, you're going to see that number go red and tick down. And that's kind of what it is there for, to kind of give players an idea of whether the formation changes they're making are good or bad.
Is that a word, Justin? Inoptimal?
Inoptimal? Yes, it is.
Non-optimal would be the... Anyway, sorry.
So, as I say, with the early set of champions that are quite a bit more simple, that is, it will generally be the case.
It's a mean thing to say about them.
Well, they are. But later on, once the champions start to get more complicated and there start to be more things that affect damage, it does start to get a little wonky. So just see what formation makes the biggest Bud, and that's probably going to be your best one.
All right, cool.
Let's move on to some more questions. Oh, that was a long one, so we were running out of time, but we got time for a little bit more.
Sure.
Devil Crayon says, with the back-end optimization, could we also get the ability to open more bounty contracts at once, please? I think you answered this already.
Yeah, I think I did. I was going to mention that sort of this isn't related to back-end issues for the bounty contracts. It's more of how many made sense to use at once, as well as sort of how well that performed visually on the front end, because that gets pretty hairy with the drops. So really, this just sort of is up to us to talk about what makes sense to make that number. So, which I'm assuming we will discuss at some point. Next question.
The next question is also from Devil Crayon, who asks, how is progress fixing the legendary forge so that it doesn't reset entirely after hitting the back button after forging?
So I did mention this to Nick, and he sort of gave an explanation as to why that had been missed and said he would fix it. Or at least I assume he said he would fix it. I'll tag it once again. I'm sure he just hasn't gotten to it yet because he is so busy with the collections dialogue.
Cool. My apologies. Next question is from Foolish Genius 89. who asks, is there anything that can be done with silly edge case animation interactions like Tatiana running off the ship into wild space to grab enemies?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of those ones where, while it is something that we could potentially put in special cases for, the amount of sort of time and say additional animation and other work that would need to cover these cases just doesn't make them very practical, and so it's not something that we focus on.
Yeah. What's the old saying? The something is not worth the squeeze.
I
Anyway.
I don't know the rest of
Yes.
that. Sorry.
I don't know either, and
The-
I'm worried that it might be
the-
dirty. So I'm just gonna move on.
Okay.
Okay. We can do one or two more, I guess.
Sure. This one is from Artemis. The wild offers seem to take into account the champions you use to a degree. Any chance we can get a feature to favorite items or characters that we might like to get in a wild offer? Hashtag wishlists.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about this before internally of some sort of way of optimizing what wild offers we're offering to people to ones that we think you'll like more. Because we do find that when we offer items that players want to buy, they're more likely to buy them than if we offer them stuff that you don't want, which is, I know, mind-blowing. Yeah, I think that we've been looking at ways to do this. I think we did make a change a few months ago so that it really tries to take into account the champions that you use to a much higher degree. So if there's a champion that you like have never put in your formation in the last like 6 months, we just do not offer items for that champion, or at least there is a very, very low chance that we would offer items for that champion. In terms of being able to specify specific items, characters, familiars, etc., that you'd like to see in wild offers, I don't know if I don't think we've talked about doing something that specific, but certainly we've talked about ways to try and get more offers, more wild offers generated that that have items you want. So we'll continue to iterate on that, I think.
Okay. I think we're out of time at this point.
I think we are too. So, if we didn't get to your question, don't worry, you will have another opportunity. We'll be live again at this same time next week, I think. Before we sign off, though, I'd like to thank our tireless mods. This week it was Mars and Gabe. Thank you, Mars and Gabe, for copying your questions into our questions doc. And okay, they didn't copy their own questions and copying the anyway. Thanks to you guys for helping make things awesome. I'm gonna go die now.
Oh, wow, that escalated really quickly. And of course, thanks to all of you for hanging out, watching the stream, asking such great questions, and for enjoying the game. Because without you, no one here gets to do what we do.
And we like what we do.
All right, enjoy the rest of your afternoon, everyone. All right, I got a good one today, Justin.
Okay, I'll try not to cough on it.
So, I broke up with my game console.
Oh no.
Now it's my Xbox. It was time for a Switch.
No PlayStation one in there?
Nope, sorry.